friends. And to today's episode, we're chatting with two Shark Tank entrepreneurs who made bold moves and confident choices to build something incredible. We'll dive into their journeys, the key lessons learned, and some surprising insights along the way. A little bit about our Shark Tank entrepreneurs. Kevin and Laurie Lane wowed Shark Tank with Create a Castle, revolutionizing sandcastle building with their split mold design. Was started as a cut in half bucket, became a Toy of the Year winner, and caught the eye of Kendra Scott, who joined their team in 2022. With outdoor and indoor castle kits, they're bringing families together one castle at a time. So Kevin and Laurie, thank you so much for being on Bold Moves, Confident Choices.
Thanks for having us.
We love it.
Yay. So, the burning question everyone wants to know before we jump into your bold moves is tell us a little bit more about your Shark Tank experience.
It was crazy exciting. And Kevin always says the thing he always says to everybody when they ask us about is we're the only ones that brought the beach to the sharks.
Yes.
So how many tons?
It was close to 2 tons of sand sitting on that table.
Yeah, we brought
You're
into
kidding.
into the set,
big.
and we got to go in the night before, which was pretty exciting. And he built the castle the night before, so we knew we were first in the morning because he built the castle. We were there till 9 o'clock or something. So
yeah,
it was pretty exciting.
When we were going through the interview process with the producers, they said, think big. I'm like, all right, I'm thinking big. Here's my idea. And they're like, how much sand? And I'm like, let's do 2 tons of sand. And they're like, okay. And they sent this little table that they had constructed. And I'm like, guys, that's not even going to hold a fraction of the sand that we have. So they had to find a custom steel-based table at Sony Studios. So
oh my gosh.
They were all like, this is a first for us, so they were they were amazing. They kind of helped us script the whole thing and figure out what we were going to do exactly. Yeah. And you were like, this is what we want. And they're like, all right, we're going to find that stuff in the studio. We actually ordered shovels and different things off Amazon, had it shipped to the studio.
Put our producers to work when we got there. I was like, here's a shovel, start throwing it into the table.
They were helping him shovel and everything.
Because we only had 2 hours to move that 2 tons of sand onto the table and do the build.
Oh my goodness. But you know what's really lucky for the two of you? I don't know if this happened for you all, but the fact you had such an elaborate setup, it made you go first in line because we were end of day. And, they always tell you it's never a guarantee, right? And it's around 4 o'clock and we're starting to freak out in our trailer and sweating bullets exactly after practicing 1,000 times in our trailer, hoping we're going to get in front of the sharks, which luckily we did. But you didn't have that fear. You knew you were getting in front of the sharks, which is really cool.
Yep. We knew that. And that was an amazing thing. And I remember the assistant producer that we were working with, how you have the one that you communicate with the whole time. And they were like, okay, well, you guys are first. You're going to be first. That is an amazing place to be. We're like, okay.
Because we built it the night before. We were actually on set the night before.
So I have chills because you were so fortunate to not have gone through that way.
Like, woo, okay, good.
Yep.
So how long was your process to get in front of the sharks?
About a year.
No, I applied in October, I think online. I had submitted us and then we got the call. I remember right around your birthday in March. So that was when the first email came and then we filmed in July. So
okay,
a while.
Yeah.
It was a long process, all the different steps and, submit this video and this video and this video. And it was all crazy and exciting and feels like a lifetime ago.
You know how the process is.
Oh, I do. It's no easy task. And it's not like you just get an email and they say, come on the show. They put you through a lot to even get to LA.
Absolutely.
Yep.
And then even if you do get to LA, there's no guarantee, as they say.
And one of the craziest parts that we will never forget with our thing is we were 2022. So we were on the tail end of COVID. So we have friends and stuff that did it during COVID, which was insanity. Brutal, and what they had to do. Vegas. Very, very different situation for Shark Tank. But so we were on the tail end of that, but they were still testing for COVID. So that was, I think, more nerve-wracking. Everybody that was in the hotel with us that was pitching and so forth, that was the most nerve-wracking part, is that we were probably tested 4 or 5 times in the few days that we were there, because they had to extend our stay because something had happened on the set, nothing to do with us. So everyone that was in our group that was pitching had to stay for like 3 or 4 days, but you couldn't even enjoy it because we had to stay in our room because we were tested for COVID every day. So we were afraid to go anywhere. But yeah, that was the most nerve-wracking, is getting on set. They're testing you for COVID and you're sitting there waiting, going, please, God, don't let me test positive. Even if you weren't sick, all the false positives. So we were like, oh my God, that's going to be terrible if you get sent home just because you tested positive. That was more nerve-wracking than pitching, I have to say.
Wow. Yeah, I can't imagine that. And then just staying in your hotel room.
Yeah, it was good because he is a web developer by trade, originally before Creative Castle. So he rebuilt our whole website in the couple days we were stuck in the hotel room. So that was good.
So that worked out.
Yeah, it was fine because you never have downtime to do that. So
what was the most surprising part of your Shark Tank experience that you can share with all of us?
That they didn't tell the backstory, I think. Because you know how it is, like you pitch longer than what you see, right? Mm-hmm. So our pitch was close to, I think, around an hour, and they only show like 10 minutes of it. And we were just really surprised it didn't.
Yeah, because he has a great backstory, which we can talk about, that started from his childhood. And kind of when we were in there, we talked a lot about that with the sharks. We were surprised that they didn't show that part on when it was edited. Yeah. So, I mean, it wasn't anything bad, but it was just definitely like, oh, I kind of thought they would show that over some other stuff.
Right. And so, Kevin, do you want to talk about your backstory now, or is that something you want to discuss later? Yeah, share the backstory.
Why not? Let's lead right into it. Yeah, the backstory is really cool. So growing up, my parents divorced early. Mm-hmm. I'm a twin. I have a twin brother and an older brother. And we grew up in a bakery, of all places. So my mother and grandmother,
in their kitchen, in a bakery.
Literally in their kitchen, in our house was this bakery. And they were local rock stars in the baking world. And they did all wedding cakes in the local area in Connecticut that we live in, Danbury, Connecticut area. And I was sitting there watching them build these elaborate, beautiful, stacked, tiered wedding cakes with fountains and all this stuff on it.
Using their springform pans. That
was part of the process. And all of the 3 boys were always running around the kitchen. So they found what we love to do, right? So I always loved art. Fell in love with art as a young kid. And my mom found these books called Draw 50 books. And Draw 50, lo and behold, on the cover was this beautiful castle. So it taught you step by step in like 5 to 10 steps how to draw this super elaborate castle. So here I am drawing this elaborate castle, watching them bake their wedding cakes with these springform pans. Fast forward 40 years, Creative Castle's born.
And
totally different platform than a wedding cake, but the same exact premise.
Concepts. And his mom found one of his actual drawings. I think it's on our website too. And it's actually looks like Creative Castle, and it's from when he was 10 years old.
So the seed was planted.
So it's always been like, that's what we tell everybody. You don't know what you're doing today that could come out in your life tomorrow. Not even tomorrow, like 30 years from now. It could be any time something kind of sits in your mind, and it might come back someday for some reason or another, whether it's personal or something with your career.
Yeah, and fast forward to now, like you said, Toy of the Year, live with Kelly and Ryan. Our product ended up on The Price is Right, Showcase Showdown.
And we were like, woo!
And now we work with Disney Cruise Lines. We're the only Sandcastle excursion in the world for any cruise line. So keep dreaming big.
Incredible. And I love that you are reiterating to dream big, because we don't do it enough.
Yeah, it's true.
And this is a thought really that was in your mind, not build a sandcastle then, but something that really started when you were a child, Kevin.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like we talk about divine intervention all the time, but we truly feel that all of those pieces were put into place early on and we didn't even know it. And it just came out.
So many different times during this whole journey, which, as you know, is like you're high, you're low, you're high, you're low. You have money, you don't have money, you have money, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's a crazy roller coaster. But every time we start to doubt and say, oh God, like, are we crazy? What are we doing this for? I'm tired of hot dogs and mac and cheese, different things. Every time you say that, something happens whatever it may be. And we keep saying, okay, somebody is guiding us in this. And his mother always says, God wouldn't have brought you this far to dump you at this point. You know what I mean? So it's
Yeah.
like we do that because that makes me keep going anyways.
Mhm.
We're very strong, faithful people. So our faith drives us to just keep going, even when there's plenty of times where I'm like, oh boy, okay. I don't know I can do it anymore. And, and then something happens and you're like, all right, so someone is still guiding us and so forth. So, I mean, I think it's just all part of the journey.
So, Laurie, when you get down in those moments, because you're right, there's peaks and valleys. It's an emotional roller coaster as an entrepreneur. And whether you're an entrepreneur or not, we all face it in life. So, what do you do to climb out of the valley and to get back up?
I look at everything that we do have. So it's easy to focus on what you don't have. Everybody
Right.
does it. We don't have enough money. We don't have enough this. We don't have enough that. Whatever it is in your life, I look at what we do have. I look at our kids. I look at the fact that we've been married 28 years. What year is it? 25? I don't know. We were married in 98. So do the math, 27 years.
Creeping up on 30 years.
Yeah, almost 30 years.
Congrats.
And have worked together because we worked with his computer business too, that we still have. So I look at that stuff. So I really shift my mind. And when we talk about the 18-year-old self thing later, I'll talk more about it. But I look at that kind of stuff as to what we have, and it changes my mindset. Like,
Right.
there's people that are suffering in so many different ways. And yeah, we might be suffering in something, but we have so much to be thankful for.
Yeah. So, before we actually get into the bold question, what is it like working with Kendra Scott? Is she active in the business?
I mean, how long has it been? A year and a half?
About a year and a
We've
half.
had a few conversations. We work with members of her team a little bit more.
Okay.
You know what I mean? She's definitely
Yeah.
excited about the product and everything. We hope that grows as we grow.
Right.
So,
She did put us in touch with her ad agency.
Yeah,
and we're
we're-
working with them now. They're giving us pointers as to, the right levers to pull for Google advertising and all that kind of stuff, which is huge.
That is big. That's super helpful, especially as a startup company.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because they're working with companies. This marketing agency does like Duluth Trading.
Oh.
We would never have access to them at
Right.
a small business level. So it's great.
course.
That kind of stuff is definitely beneficial.
All right, y'all. We have to get into the big questions because we could talk all day about
I know.
Shark Tank, which I love, and I know you do too. What is the big, bold, confident choice that you've made in your life that's catapulted you all to the next level?
Well, we talked about this and we kind of both settled on the same thing.
Could be two things, but yeah, I'll let you talk.
Well,
to
I'll
what
do the
we
first
talked
one that
about.
we talked about. But when Kevin thought of this whole idea, we were on vacation in California and watching a dad and his son. So that whole story that we tell, he watched them on the beach and he would cut his own garbage cans in half and do all this stuff. We had gone through that whole process. We had done all the designs, all the prototypes. And when we had to make that decision to pull the trigger to spend $60,000, I think at the time, which
60
now is
upfront.
like nothing with the amount we've spent on molds, which blows my mind that I can even say that. You know what I mean? Like you think about like people like, woohoo, I got $1,000. I'm like, yeah, that doesn't get you far in manufacturing. So when we had to make that decision and we had started manufacturing in Taiwan and we had to tell them that night, we were like, do we do it? Do we not do it? We're taking a risk. We had done beach to beach instead of door to door. We had gone beach to beach with this one prototype that we had
3D printed.
3D printed and the one from China, right?
The machine one.
Yeah, the
CNC
machine one, testing the product. So we knew it was great. People were, so receptive to it. So we kind of knew that we could have a home run, but we were like, do we spend this amount of money? And like totally we're jumping off a cliff. You don't know. So that was our big, okay, we're going all in. Once we do this, there's no turning back, so that was our big thing.
So, Laurie and Kevin, what was it like? What was that feeling when you made that choice for the $60,000 investment? What was going through your heart, your mind, everything?
Yeah, I mean, you're basically back then, that was like a year's salary for us almost, right? Because she was home with the kids and
Yeah.
I was working, so close to a full year's salary. And you're like, wow, I'm taking up a full year's worth of work to step into this great unknown. I'm basically stepping into a fire, not knowing if I'm going to get burned or not, you know?
And I personally wanted to throw up, but it was like, you kind of like, you're like, oh God. Your mom always says, like, faith is like taking the last step when you can't see the bottom of the staircase or going, you know what I mean? We were like, okay, here we go. We're in this together and we're just going to see what happens. We had done our research. It's not like we didn't do any research prior, but it was definitely a leap of faith too.
Yep.
And what year was this, Kevin and Laurie, that you did?
The product came in 2018, so 2017.
Okay. So how soon after you made this investment did you get the product on the market?
2018,
2018,
right? Yeah.
We ended up on a segment with Live with Kelly and Ryan, and that's when it all popped.
We actually, it was funny because we got our PR guy, Barry Schwartz, who is amazing, like definitely in the toy space. He had connected us with Chris Byrne, the toy guy, who is like a big part of the toy industry.
He's been on the History Channel.
He's amazing.
He's amazing.
And they were both our biggest cheerleaders from the beginning. And so having them in our corner was incredible. Chris Byrne is like, I'm going to bring this on Live with Kelly and Ryan for like a toy segment. And it was May, right?
Yep.
And so we're like, okay, so how many should we expect to sell? We had no clue. He's like, people usually sell maybe 30 you'll get from the segment or something. We're like, okay, wow. We had sold like 30, 2 months. So we were like, okay, this will be really cool. So I remember we were sitting in the green room. A bunch of us were in there. Our son was actually home. So it airs and it airs in the 3 different time zones. So we're sitting there, we're just like, oh, look, it was so awesome. The audience clapped and our son is texting. He's like, did anybody look to see if anybody's ordering? And we're like, oh, so we pull up the phone and it's like, boom, 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 boom,
you
boom.
could see the
boom,
orders
boom, boom,
coming from the different
from each time zone. And we sold 500 and not just 30. And we were like, okay, that was great. Now, how do we do all that? We were like,
did you have the inventory?
Yeah,
we had the inventory,
we did.
but we had no infrastructure to process 500 orders. So we had every friend and family member come, and our friend Paige, who has since passed away from cancer. I remember Paige came in and we were like all over the warehouse and she's like, that's it, line up, do this. Like she took charge of that warehouse, got everybody doing a process and we were like, okay. And we got them all out, but it was like, okay, right into the fire. It threw us, but it was incredible,
exciting.
So exciting. When we were seeing those orders, we're just all just sitting there going, oh my God, now, oh gosh, now we got to process them.
Yeah.
So
that is awesome.
Yeah.
And that you were able to get that national publicity right out of the gate.
Yep.
Oh,
And then once you got that national publicity now you've had multiple abilities to get out there.
Yeah.
What did that do for your business? You sold 500 then, but then did it really start to make you as a known company in the space?
It definitely did in the toy space because there were some companies, like some of the online toy companies that we had emailed. We were emailing people and they actually emailed us. So it kind of put our name out there. It gave us a little more clout. Yeah. And we always say that with Shark Tank too. Some people, Shark Tank is the whole part of their business, which is great if it's helping them run their business and everything. But ours definitely helped us. Having the Shark Tank thing helped us with Disney. Having the Live with Kelly and Ryan thing helped us get on QVC. So each of those steps kind of helps the next step. It just
solidifies you as a business,
gives you a little more clout and credit,
It's all part of the piece of the pie, right? Like Shark Tank is a sliver, QVC is a sliver, HSN's a sliver, Live with Kelly and Ryan. Price is Right. It's all slivers of the pie to make the greater whole.
When you talk about starting a business, because lots of people have ideas, Kevin and Laurie, right? Help us understand, how do you get started when you have an idea? And then once you bring it to life, you mentioned a PR company. How do you get yourself out there? I know this is a very complex question, but how can you tell our listeners to get going themselves with their ideas and get out there to market?
My take on that would be, to get started is find your niche, right? Like Laurie said, instead of going door to door, we went beach to beach. That was our market research. With a simple 3D printed prototype belt buckle strap, I was out there in the beaches getting reactions. There was at points, I mean, we would find the busiest sections at the beach we could with these small cylinders that we had at the time, but a prototype of working product. I mean, I would look up, we would have 50 people around us being like, we can't believe what you just built.
Yeah,
Oh my
like,
God,
what are you
where can we
doing?
get
Yeah,
this?
yeah.
So we knew from that research, going beach to beach like that and constantly getting the same reaction. At one point, we had investors out of Boston. We were on some beach up in Boston. He's like, I want to invest in your business. Get that data early on, because when you get that data from real people seeing the product in action and actually functioning, that's invaluable. That's a huge telltale sign for you whether or not you're going to have success.
Yeah, and you have to have that
You have
before you take that step forward. And also, too, we talk about, like you said, the PR agency and all of that. The thing that I tell kids, like when we talk in high schools and talk in schools and stuff, is never burn a bridge with any contact that you have, especially in business. I've worked for different companies. I worked for Disney. I did work for Disney. I worked for the Gap. I have connections with all of the people that I previously worked with. Some of the bosses were crazy back in the day that probably would never, some of the stuff like we laugh at,
Don't say any
in these
names.
jobs. No, I won't.
Yeah.
But I'm still connected with those people. Never burn a bridge, because you never know where your paths could cross again. And Kevin worked for internet.com. It was like when the internet was first getting really big back in the
90s,
day.
yeah.
Yeah. His contact there, the owner of the company, that's how we got the PR guy had done his PR. And Kevin was also working with an engineer because the owner of the company had designed something. And Kevin just happened to be working with that engineer. And he said, I have this great idea. And Joel, God bless him, designed our first model of it and stuff. So it was all from our connections is how it happened. So it goes back to the divine intervention, which definitely somebody was guiding us to have all of those connections at the time that we needed them. But it also comes back to keeping those resources in your back pocket, no matter what. I don't care how much you don't like somebody at work, if you need to move on with a smile, because you never know when they might benefit you. You might benefit them someday in the future.
What great key tips here. So, Kevin, what you said, again, everybody is hearing that you got on Kelly and Ryan. That wasn't out of the gate. You did a lot of pre-work to get there. You were knocking on doors before you even made the huge investments into producing more inventory. And then, Laurie, reiterating, your network is powerful. We all have to lean into our network. Don't burn a bridge. You never know when they're going to come back around and provide guidance or assistance for whatever we need.
Yep.
So again, love to keep talking in that direction, but more powerful, I need to know what you would tell your 18-year-old self. And I want to hear it from each one of you. So Kevin, I want you to go first. And then Laurie, I'm going to ask you the same question.
Okay.
I think I would tell my 18-year-old self that you can do anything. You can. And growing up, I was kind of more of an introvert, believe it or not. That's why I got into computers, right? I could be behind the scenes. I didn't have to be out front in the spotlight.
I changed that.
Yeah. And
we've been together a long time.
I would basically tell myself, always dream big. Don't ever stop dreaming big. Yeah, that's what I would tell my 18-year-old self.
I love that. And Laurie?
I would say mine is more of definitely a personal thing too, is never take people in your life for granted. So we had a personal family tragedy when I was 18, which always brings me back to that age. My little brother was killed on a motorcycle and he was 16 and I was 18. And that changed our family and everything. But it also made me, unfortunately, have to not take things for granted, because when you go through that tragedy. So I would tell myself from as young as you can be to not take people in your life for granted. And it's a good reminder as I go through life. I mean, I'm 56 years old now and still I always think of that. Don't go to bed without saying I love you. Don't forget to tell people that you love them and you appreciate them, because life is short and it's something that stays with you. And it's so, so important to just cherish the good. And like when you asked earlier, how do you get yourself out of the funk and stuff when that kind of thing happens? That's what I do. I think about, okay, this is the good that has happened. This is the good that we have. And I'm very blessed in so many ways.
All right, you two, I have to tell you what you would tell your 18-year-old self. It's interesting to think about our conversation here today because I saw each one of those things come out through our conversation. Dream big, think big. Kevin, this was something you started. You had a vision of a castle. It wasn't necessarily a sandcastle. You were going to have a company on sandcastles, but you were doing sandcastles when you were younger. So it was already in your mind. You can achieve anything. You're doing it now. You have a dream you've brought to reality. You took a risk, which was a big, bold, confident risk to put a lot of money towards something you both believed in and not to take people for granted, Laurie. I mean, wow, life is short when it comes down to it, right? And the people who come into our lives, they come into our lives for a reason.
Absolutely.
I'm just
You
happy.
too?
I'm just happy she didn't tell her 18-year-old self, don't marry that guy named Kevin.
Oh, I didn't think of that one. That would have been good.
All right, everybody. That is Laurie's real reason of what she would tell her 18-year-old self, but we
Run!
chose not to go there today. Hey, you two. It has been really wonderful having you on Bold Moves, Confident Choices. Is there anything else before we leave today that you want to tell our listeners?
I mean, I think we kind of
Covered all the bases.
yeah.
What we will tell your listeners is thank you, Courtney, for having us
Yes.
on. We love the
course.
podcast. And as we talked about early on, we listened to one last night before we actually did this, and we love the format. So a lot of fun. Keep
Well,
it going.
thank you so much. I so appreciate your time and your space, your energy, your stories. And I know it's going to inspire others out there to be a better version of themselves. So, Kevin and Laurie, where can they find you? Where can they find your business and all this good stuff?
Everything is Create a Castle. All of our social handles are Create a Castle, all one word.
Yep.
Our website, createacastle.com. We're on Amazon. Our website is probably the best place to find everything that we offer. All of our products and services and lessons and all of that is all at createacastle.com.
Super simple, everyone. You heard it. Createacastle.com. That's where you'll find Laurie and Kevin. I want to thank all of you for being here today and listening. And as always, go be bold, be confident, and be you. Thanks. Thanks for tuning in to Bold Moves, Confident Choices. Remember, the boldest moves come from trusting ourselves and taking action. If you love this episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, or share with someone who needs a little extra boost to boldness. Until next time, be bold, be confident, be you. Thanks.